Hi, I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Cindy.
And we're here with another Feeding Frenzy for the Master Key System. We are on part 4, number 29, 30, 31, and 32. Is that right?
That's right. And the reason is that this is our
Time
exercise.
for exercise.
Right. The last time we were supposed to meditate, right?
Mm-hmm.
And we're supposed to get our minds blank, right? Remember that? Relax. Just relax. All right, last week I asked you to relax, to let go physically. This week I'm going to ask you, and also remember that we're doing this longer than weeks.
Well,
so these were
yeah.
lessons that were supposed to be a week, so ours is much longer than that. This week I'm going to ask you to let go mentally.
Okay.
If you practice the exercise given you last week, 15 or 20 minutes a day in accordance with the instruction, you can no doubt relax physically. And anyone who cannot consciously do this quickly and completely is not a master of himself. He has not obtained freedom. He is still a slave to conditions. But I shall assume that you have mastered the exercise and are ready to take the next step, which is mental freedom. This week, after taking your usual position, remove all tension by completely relaxing, then mentally let go of all adverse conditions, such as hatred, anger, worry, jealousy, envy, sorrow, trouble, or disappointment of any kind.
Well, he's not asking for much, is he?
You may say that you cannot let go of these things, but you can. You can do so by mentally determining to do so, by voluntary intention and persistence. The reason that some cannot do this is because they allow themselves to be controlled by the emotions instead of by their intellect.
Mm-hmm.
But those who will be guided by the intellect will gain the victory.
Go nerds.
You will not succeed the first time you try. And you must succeed in dismissing, eliminating, and completely destroying these negatives and destructive thoughts, because they are the seed which is constantly germinating into discordant conditions of every conceivable kind and description. And then there's a quote that I'll go ahead and read. There is nothing truer than the quality of thought which we entertain correlates certain externals in the outside world. This is the law from which there is no escape. And it is this law, this correlative of the thought with its object, that from time immemorial has led the people to believe in special providence. Okay, so talk to me about letting go mentally. Can you do that?
Well, the first thing that came to mind when you were talking about that was Edwin Gaines has said it in her book, For Spiritual Laws of Prosperity, about she came to a point where she decided she was not going to have an upset.
Yep.
And I think that's what it's talking about. Literally deciding mentally, I'm just not going to be upset.
Mm-hmm. I like where he says that you get to that point when your intellect overrules your emotions. Uh-huh. How hard is that for you?
It just depends on how much practice I've had with it.
And what it is.
And what it is. Something new, obviously, I'm not real great at. Mm-hmm. Something I hadn't practiced before, I'm not real great at. But by the time I practiced it, I get better at it. I notice the hurdles that I jump more easily. You know?
So that leads to a good question. How do you practice it? How do you practice it?
I think the first time that I do it, I have to start with reflection, because I can't immediately stop the emotion. So I have to start with looking at, all right, almost like a football coach watches a play after it's happened. Mm-hmm. He can't see how it's going to play out because he's in the middle of it. So I'm going to watch the highlights of it, and then we'll discuss what should you have done here, what should you have done here, what could I have done differently here. Mm-hmm. So when I first start the approach, I have to look at it hindsight and say, okay, I screwed up here, here, and here. So then when I meet it again, I can remember, all right, this last time I screwed up here, here, and here. So I'm going to make a change in this part.
Right. But that's not what I meant really with that question. It was like the only way to practice these things of getting hurt is to keep getting hurt.
Well, that's exactly where I was going. I have to keep meeting it. And each time, the first time I get there, I have to look at it in reflection. Mm-hmm. The second time I get there, all right, I've already looked at it in reflection, so now I can change one thing about it. But I have to keep hitting it head on.
Right.
And I have to keep hitting that situation.
So I think sometimes when we ask why God, it's because He's trying to train us, you know, or we have to keep hitting those things before we can get through them.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we have to, I know, again, with Bob Proctor, he kept talking about the terror barrier. And that we had to keep facing those fears over and over again. And each time we do, it's almost like hitting a brick wall with a hammer. And eventually we break through that barrier. But we have to keep hitting it.
Yeah.
We can't run from it.
Right. Right.
So we have to keep hitting up against those fears and those hurts. And allowing people to stomp on our heart. You know?
Or to upset us again.
Or to upset us again.
So just like he was talking about there, what I was telling you, and Wayne said about not having an upset, that was not one declaration. It wasn't one situation.
Right.
She had to keep saying it, and every time she got upset, she'd have to look at it again, change something else, until she kept hitting that barrier and finally able to break through.
Right.
And if you ask her today, I'm sure she would tell you she's still working on that.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. And I know from my experience, the older I get, the more I'm like, I thought I'd already conquered that one.
Okay.
But, you know, every time it hits again, I'm getting better at saying, okay, thank you for showing me the hole in my armor. Thank you for showing me the one place I hadn't figured out needed working on.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, thank you for
me
showing
too.
me the triggers that I still have, even though I didn't think I had any left, you know. So are you good
Show me what I need to approach this.
Right. So are you good at this meditating stuff? Where you can let go mentally? You said last time you could let go of the physical and relax, but can you let go mentally?
With practice.
Yeah.
I get a little better each time.
Yeah.
I know I've been having problems with a very close relationship with my son, and I get a little better each time.
Yep.
You know? So, by the time it resolves itself, I'll be good at it. The meditating, I get a little better at it each time. Because I hear a little more. I'm able to do a little more. Yeah.
Yeah. I agree.
I just noticed that for me, it is much harder for me to decide, okay, now it's time for me to meditate. I have to listen to my inner guidance. And sometimes it happens in the middle of a cooking dinner. Or sometimes it happens before I get up in the morning. Or sometimes it happens on a drive. Or sometimes it happens in the middle of a walk or during exercise. Or I don't really have a set time to meditate. And I have not conquered being able to just carve out a set time and do it then.
Right. I think that's habit too. I know
Yeah,
for
it
me,
is.
it's my morning times. You know.
It is. And that's when I usually meditate more. But I also have other times during the day.
Oh yeah, me too. More times that happen just naturally like that. So it's not just a one-time thing. But I think you can have both, and I think both work really well.
Yes.
The more you can do it, the better.
Yes.
You know.
Before I started being able to listen to what goes on in my inner world, I needed that set time. And so now that I'm able to listen to what's going on in my inner world, I don't need the set time as much as I do, or as much as I did before.
Right. Yeah.
If that makes any sense.
Yeah, it does a lot.
So
Yep.
it's good stuff.
Shree.